Prison Commissary Secrets: How Inmates Survive on Dollars, Psychology, and Power. Inside every prison, there's a system that looks simple from the outside. A weekly list of snacks, toiletries, and small privileges. But behind bars, this list becomes something much darker. A psychological survival map, a hierarchy of power, and the only place where an inmate can make a choice that actually feels like their own. The commissary isn't just a store. It's the pressure point where scarcity shapes behavior, where identity is rebuilt, and where every small purchase carries consequences far beyond the price tag. This documentary contains descriptions of prison conditions and violence for educational purposes based on verified sources. Viewer discretion is advised. For more deep research of prison documentary like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. For most people, freedom means millions of choices: what to eat, what to wear, when to go outside. Prison strips all of that away. Suddenly, the human brain is left to function in a world of severe limitation, where the only decisions available are the ones printed on a commissary slip. Researchers from the National Institute of Justice, the American Psychological Association, and studies by Dr. Craig Haney consistently show that limited-choice environments reshape motivation, decision-making, and emotional stability. Inside prisons, commissary becomes more than convenience. It becomes a psychological lifeline, a microcosm where control, scarcity, and identity collide. In this documentary, we break down how the commissary system shapes inmate behavior, influences emotions, and becomes a powerful internal economy. And we begin with its most uncomfortable truth. Your choices define who you are, and in prison, those choices shrink to almost nothing. The psychology of limited choice. Every prison commissary list is built on one principle: restriction. Not just physical restriction, but cognitive restriction, the kind that forces the brain into a constant state of adaptation. Studies from the Chicago Crime Lab and psychological findings published through the APA show that when humans are placed in low-choice environments, the mind compensates by assigning extra emotional value to the few choices remaining. This means a packet of noodles, a pair of socks, or a small bottle of shampoo can carry far more meaning than the item itself. Inmates describe the moment they fill out a commissary form as one of the only times they feel personal agency. Even though the choices are few, the act of choosing becomes a form of mental survival, a reminder that not everything is controlled by the institution. One former inmate explained that the commissary list felt like a mirror, showing what mattered most at that moment: comfort, respect, belonging, or simply feeling human. This mindset aligns with findings from corrections researchers like John Irwin, who documented how incarcerated people build identity through whatever choices remain available. Inside prison, the psychological impact is clear. The fewer the options, the more meaning each choice carries, and the more emotional weight is placed on the commissary system itself. Scarcity, status, and the internal economy. Scarcity rewires human behavior. In the free world, scarcity might mean a sold-out item or waiting for payday. Inside prison, scarcity becomes a daily psychological pressure, shaping how inmates view themselves and how they interact with others. Research from the National Institute of Justice shows that when essential items become limited, people begin to attach emotional meaning to goods that wouldn't normally matter. In prison, this transforms ordinary commissary items into markers of status, symbols of stability, and sometimes signals of who has support and who doesn't. Psychologists refer to this as compensatory value assignment, when the brain elevates the importance of available resources because everything else has been removed. This isn't about greed, it's about the fundamental human need for stability and identity. Inmates quickly learn that certain items create subtle forms of status. Someone who consistently has fresh hygiene supplies may appear more organized. Someone who can afford weekly snacks may be viewed as socially supported. These aren't luxuries, they're psychological indicators of belonging, security, and personal control. In a controlled environment where nearly every choice is made for you, possessing even small items can feel like a declaration. I still have something of my own. But scarcity doesn't just create status, it creates movement, a flow of goods and favors that becomes an internal economy. Not one based on wealth, but on trust, dependability, and the ability to navigate social pressure without crossing dangerous lines. Former inmates interviewed by researchers described commissary items as the safe currency, the one form of exchange that didn't always involve conflict and didn't break institutional rules. Through this lens, commissary becomes not just about possession but about managing relationships, understanding tension, and reading social cues, all skills tied directly to psychological survival. Inside this system, scarcity is not just a limitation. It's a force that creates structure, identity, and subtle power, all without a single loud confrontation. Commissary as emotional regulation. In environments where freedom is restricted and routines are rigid, emotions don't disappear, they intensify. According to research published by the American Psychological Association, individuals under long-term confinement experience heightened stress responses, reduced autonomy, and increased sensitivity to small frustrations. Inside prison, these emotional surges often have no safe outlet. This is where commissary quietly becomes something unexpected, a tool for emotional regulation. Psychologists studying confinement note that when people are given even small opportunities for self-directed decisions, their stress decreases and their emotional stability improves. Buying a snack, choosing a preferred soap, or saving a favorite item creates a sense of microcomfort, a moment where the individual feels grounded. For many inmates, commissary becomes the closest thing to a control valve, a way to manage feelings before they build into something larger. Not through confrontation or withdrawal, but through small decisions that bring predictability into an unpredictable environment. A former incarcerated individual interviewed in a corrections research program explained it this way. Every week, when commissary hit, I could breathe. It made the days feel less heavy. That statement mirrors a psychological principle observed by Dr. Craig Haney. When people are denied broad control over their environment, even minor choices can offer a stabilizing effect. Items like coffee, pastries, or hygiene products can serve as emotional anchors. They remind a person of routine, self-care, or home, and these reminders reduce the mental strain that long-term confinement can create. This doesn't mean commissary erases stress or fixes systemic issues. It simply acts as the one place where inmates can build emotional routines. A morning coffee ritual, a snack saved for the hardest days, or toiletries that help maintain a sense of personal dignity. These small acts become part of a silent mental survival strategy, one grounded not in luxury, but in psychological necessity. The social language of commissary. In every prison, spoken language is only half the story. The real communication, the quiet negotiations, the unspoken alliances, the subtle signals, often happens through commissary. Not because the items themselves are powerful, but because they function as a social language that everyone inside understands. Corrections researchers like John Irwin and Institutional Behavior Studies from the NIJ describe this as symbolic exchange. Objects take on meaning far beyond their physical use. A single item can send messages about trust, boundaries, loyalty, independence, or even caution. For example, offering someone a small item without being asked can communicate, "You're safe with me." But offering too much, too often, sends a different message, one that implies a future expectation. Inside a closed environment, intentions matter as much as actions. Inmates learn to read these signals quickly. A simple gesture, like sharing coffee, might symbolize community. Another gesture, like asking for repeated favors, might indicate instability or hidden motives. None of this involves aggression. It's a quiet system built on observation, emotional intelligence, and caution. This is where commissary becomes a social stabilizer. It fills the gaps where words can't be trusted or where direct questions might be seen as disrespectful. Instead of asking someone how they feel, people interpret their routines, who they share with, what they save, what they avoid, how often they receive support from outside. Psychological findings from confinement studies show that humans naturally create micro-communities when options are limited. Commissary becomes the structure for those communities, a way to recognize who is dependable, who is consistent, and who maintains respectful boundaries. One former inmate who participated in a corrections behavior study explained it this way. You don't ask people personal questions. You watch how they treat their commissary. That tells you everything you need to know. This social language reduces misunderstandings. It allows people to maintain dignity without confrontation. And it helps individuals build quiet, steady connections that make the day-to-day environment emotionally manageable. Inside this world, Commissary is not just a list of items. It's a form of communication built on silence, intent, and the delicate balance of trust. The role of outside support. In the free world, a deposit of $20 might seem insignificant. Inside prison, that same $20 can redefine a person's emotional stability, reshape their identity, and influence how they navigate social life. Outside support, whether from family, friends, or community programs, becomes one of the most powerful psychological factors tied to commissary. Studies cited by the National Institute of Justice and research from the American Psychological Association consistently show that incarcerated individuals who maintain strong outside connections experience lower stress, more stable decision-making, and better long-term outcomes after release. That support is often expressed through commissary accounts. When someone's name is called during commissary distribution, the moment carries deep emotional weight. It's a reminder that someone beyond the walls still sees them as human, still invests in them, still believes they deserve comfort and dignity. This feeling can be grounding, a psychological anchor in an environment built on routine and restriction. A former inmate interviewed in a reentry-focused study described that moment as proof that the world hadn't forgotten me. It wasn't about the items themselves, it was the meaning attached to them. Every package of coffee or soap symbolized connection, a bridge between isolation and community. But the emotional impact doesn't end there. Outside support can also influence internal confidence. Those with consistent deposits often feel more secure, not because they possess more items, but because they feel less alone. That emotional security reduces stress, lowers reactivity, and helps avoid impulsive decisions, findings supported by decades of confinement research. Conversely, individuals without support must navigate a different psychological terrain. Many develop resilience and independence, finding ways to maintain dignity despite limited resources. Researchers note that these individuals often form quiet mutual support relationships with others in similar positions, creating small, stable networks built on shared understanding rather than material exchange. In both cases, the psychological theme is the same. Commissary becomes a reflection of connection. Who has external support, who must build internal strength, and how people adapt emotionally to the presence or absence of that lifeline. Inside prison, outside support is not measured in dollars. It's measured in meaning, identity, routine, and the struggle for control. In most prisons, daily life is shaped by strict schedules. Wake-up times, meal times, movement times, lights out. This routine is rigid by design, meant to maintain order. But psychologically, it can erode a person's sense of self, especially during long sentences. Research from Dr. Craig Haney, the APA, and multiple correctional behavior studies shows that when individuals lose control over their environment, they begin to grasp tightly onto small rituals that help rebuild identity. Inside prison, commissary becomes one of the few systems that allow this. Every item purchased represents a piece of personal identity in an otherwise uniform world. A certain brand of soap might remind someone of home. A favorite snack might symbolize comfort. A weekly spending routine might recreate normalcy that confinement has stripped away. These routines are not trivial. They're coping structures rooted in clinical psychology. Inmates often describe how they organize, save, or rotate their commissary in specific ways. A morning coffee ritual, saving a treat for the end of the week, or arranging personal items neatly on a shelf. These small behaviors act as anchors, helping them hold onto a structured version of themselves. According to corrections research, these rituals support two psychological needs. Autonomy, the ability to make a decision that isn't dictated by the institution. Continuity, the ability to maintain a sense of self across time, despite confinement. A case study from a corrections behavioral program documented an inmate who used his commissary routine to stabilize his mood. He explained that setting aside one snack each week reminded him of planning for the future, something incarceration often disrupts. This aligns with findings from the Chicago Crime Lab, which note that maintaining future-oriented thinking reduces hopelessness and supports mental resilience. Even the act of budgeting commissary funds creates a psychological rhythm that contrasts the monotony of prison life. Within a place where choices are narrowed, this small planning process reinforces the idea that not all control is gone. Identity, inside prison, is built in fragments. Commissary becomes one of those fragments, a quiet, consistent reminder that despite tightened restrictions, a person can still choose what to value, how to express themselves, and how to maintain a sense of inner order. When choice becomes resilience, the commissary system may be limited, controlled, and tightly monitored, but within those boundaries, something powerful emerges, resilience shaped by choice. Not the dramatic kind found in movies, but the quiet, steady resilience that psychologists describe as adaptive coping, the ability to find stability even when options are scarce. Multiple studies from the APA, the National Institute of Justice, and confinement research programs emphasize that when individuals are placed in environments with restricted freedom, they often develop stronger internal strategies for managing stress and maintaining identity. Prison commissary becomes one of the clearest examples of this adaptation. Every choice an inmate makes, what to buy, when to use it, what to save, becomes a small act of self-direction. These decisions accumulate over time, forming a mental framework that helps people withstand the emotional weight of confinement. Researchers call this microagency, the ability to make meaningful decisions within small boundaries. In many interviews conducted by corrections programs, formerly incarcerated individuals described commissary choices as their personal moment of control. Not power over others, not dominance, but control over themselves. And this internal control becomes the foundation of psychological endurance. One individual shared that saving a small item each week reminded them that they could still plan ahead. Another explained that choosing a certain brand of hygiene product helped them maintain a sense of dignity. These expressions of self aren't trivial, they reflect a deeper truth found throughout institutional behavior studies. People adapt best when they can still shape their environment, even in small ways. Over time, these microchoices turn into a survival system built on routine, reflection, and emotional balance. They help individuals stay grounded, avoid impulsive decisions, and maintain a sense of internal order despite external restriction. Prison is designed to limit control. But through commissary, through the psychology of limited choice, individuals often rebuild a version of themselves untouched by the environment around them. This resilience isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It's quiet, deliberate, and deeply human. The human truth behind the list. The commissary system may look simple on paper, a list of items, a balance of funds, a weekly order form. But behind bars, it becomes far more. A mirror of identity, a tool of emotional survival, a language of trust, and a symbol of connection to the outside world. Every limited choice carries meaning. Every item becomes part of a psychological strategy. And every small decision reminds the individual that even in a controlled place, the mind still fights for autonomy, dignity, and hope. This documentary reveals a truth that studies from the NIJ, APA, Haney, Irwin, and the Chicago Crime Lab all support. Human resilience doesn't vanish inside prison, it adapts. If you want more deep psychological documentaries that break down the hidden systems shaping human behavior behind bars, make sure you're part of this community. Backhand Index Pointing Right subscribe for more real, source-backed prison psychology stories. Backhand Index Pointing Right stay tuned. The next episode goes even deeper.